with us right now. And Gina, let me go to you first on the idea of the economy moving up. I'd say a couple things going on here, possibly. One might be, thank goodness, we haven't had recently here, as we had and when we were doing that previous poll early in the summer, terrorist attacks, right in people's mind where they were thinking about it. So maybe that's part of it. But it also may speak to the economy. What does it say to you?
Yeah, well, I think that, as we are watching our economy completely flounder, we have to be thinking in terms of what's coming at us with the next administration. I think it's forced a lot of people to think that way. I think it plays, honestly, right into Mr. Trump's hands because he's the one who knows how to deal with economic issues. If he will begin to talk more about that, I think people will see that his plan is the one that makes economic sense if you've taken basic economics in school.
Here's what I'll say, Lauren. I don't know if it's the economy, as Gina says, completely floundering. I mean, I would say if it's getting better at a slower rate maybe than it should be. But I'd say that Gina's point, Lauren. Lauren, you hear us okay, by the way?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
So if Gina is saying basically that this plays into Donald Trump's strength, I think she's right about that. The polling does show us that Trump, if he polls well on anything, it's terrorism. And it's the economy. That's what he's done throughout. So you think it's a strength for him? Worried about it?
No, I don't think it's a strength for him because there's very few economists that have any respectable ilk who actually think his economic plan is going to help the economy. And it's of course ridiculous to say that our economy is floundering. Floundering would be the kind of recession that we saw following the 2008 crash. That's not at all what's happening. We have had slower growth than we. Yeah, it's not as big as we'd like. But look, we've had how many months of consecutive job growth? Could it be better? Absolutely. And one of the biggest issues in the economy right now is that those at the lowest end of the economic scale are doing the most poorly. And the question is, does adding trillions of dollars to the deficit, as the Trump plan would potentially do, improve the economy, or does, for instance, raising the minimum wage for the lowest level workers in the American economy make a bigger difference?
What do you say, Gina?
And I think on par, the polls are showing that obviously Americans support Hillary Clinton's plan.
It sounds like maybe she hasn't spent much time in the parts of our country that are in dire need, like Detroit, where Mr. Trump will be speaking today directly to the people being the most affected by what is a floundering economy. I guess it depends on who you talk to. Those of us sitting here might be doing just fine. Hillary Clinton is certainly doing fine, making hundreds of millions of dollars herself off of what is essentially a slush fund. But that doesn't mean that there are people in Detroit who are suffering, people in outstate America who are suffering. Mr. Trump's economic policy is very sound. You look at some of the leading economists in the world who are saying that Mr. Trump's plan is so basically much better. And all you have to look to is the fact that we have doubled the debt under the Clinton and Obama
I'm not sure that the economists matter that much, though, Lauren. I know Gina is saying that, but I don't know, Lauren, that the economists will matter that much. I know you'll probably come back
and say because
the economists
don't matter. But if you want to talk about Detroit, let's look at
there's
how
a populist
Democrats have
message
done in Michigan
from Trump, right? That's different than what we hear from some other Republicans that might resonate, Lauren, to be fair, in a place like Detroit.
Absolutely. Well, it's not going to resonate in Detroit because Detroit and Michigan has been overwhelmingly Democrat for a long, long time. I don't think there's any question that Trump is going to lose Detroit by ridiculous numbers, if for no other reason than the minority
of the city, right? But the state, and also states like Pennsylvania,
precisely why their economies are in such peril.
Can I finish? Thank you.
Every place where
hold on a
Democrats
second, Gina. I'll stop you for a second, Gina, because I honestly did not hear what Lauren said there. So we were all speaking at once. Go ahead, just finish that thought, Lauren, then we'll go back to Gina.
No, I appreciate it. Look, there's no question that there are Americans who are struggling in the current environment, but I think the bigger issue is whether or not investing in things like minimum wage hikes for the lowest level workers in the country is going to make a difference. Obviously, we have major displacement that's happened in the economy because of big changes in the global economy. We're not turning back the clock on globalization. That's impossible. That's isolationist tactics. Even Republicans, even mainstream Republicans, think that's an insane economic policy. And you can only look to the hundreds of Republicans who are refusing to support Trump specifically over economic issues.
The one thing that is that Trump needs is to sell that, Gina, in those places you were referring to. Maybe not inner city Detroit. I know that's where he's going, but I was making a more broad statement about a state, maybe like Michigan, but certainly a state like Pennsylvania and definitely a state like Ohio. That's where he needs that message to resonate, Gina. You think it is right now?
I think I think he will peak at absolutely the right time. And this is where she's wrong and where Democrat policy is so bad. One thing we need to learn once and for all, Tax hikes are not investments. Anyone who knows basic Econ 101 can tell you that. We need to start teaching business in our schools again because there's so little knowledge out there. When you're calling a tax hike an investment, that's wrong. Mr. Trump, in his win-win plan, in his book, talks about how you can make negotiations where everybody wins. For example, if you just look at his illegal immigration policy, that will automatically hike the wages of workers
I
and
do
tank
actually
the
want to look at
economy
that
in
for
the
a minute.
process.
unknown amounts, maybe higher than the quote-unquote investment that Hillary wants to raise.
Right,
on,
you mean
on
building roads and
only hurt
schools
our
and
economy.
infrastructure. You mean roads and schools and infrastructure, which we need to fundamentally function
Those are
as a
not,
country,
that
as
is
opposed to
not the same thing
deporting
as
11 million
investments.
people.
Those are tax increases.
Now, since
How
we're
are
all
you
getting
paying for
along so
those?
well here
How are you
today,
paying for
I
those?
actually do want to keep you both longer and talk
Gina
about
and
a
I
few
love
of the
each
other
other. We
issues
just
here.
disagree.
No, I'm just joking around. I like disagreement. It's just when I can't hear what's going on sometimes.
Fair
I'm like,
point.
hey, what's going on here? So Donald Trump goes to Mexico, as these pictures illustrate for us earlier in the week, and he has this exchange with the president, President Peña of Mexico. Then he comes back to Arizona and takes a hard-line stance against immigration. Now, there are reports that he revised that speech, that primetime speech, after the president of Mexico made his tweet. There's this back and forth, Gina, about who said what and who's going to pay for the wall and what discussion was being had behind closed doors. Gina, you first on this. What do you make of it?
Well, I think it was probably the best week of Mr. Trump's campaign, and I think you'll continue to see him doing great things. He not only spoke to the American people very presidentially, he beat Hillary not only to Louisiana, but also there, and now here he's going to Detroit. This woman, Hillary, who has not even bothered to do a press conference, she will not answer the questions of the American people, and yet here he's gone and he has really, really looked presidential this week, and I think his policy on this is very sound, and I think his economic policy on this is a win-win. No matter how you slice it, I think this works, and we're going to see that going forward.
I'm sure, without a doubt, Lauren agrees 100%. Isn't that right, Lauren?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, here's what I agree. That has to be the lowest bar in history for a good week that I've ever seen. If that's a good week, we really.
Well, and the polls are
we're in a
tightening.
sad
Let's be
place.
fair about the polls tightening.
You know
I know
what?
she
The
still
polls are
has a lead,
exactly
but
where
they are
were.
tightening.
The polls are exactly where they were 4 years ago, and Obama won by 10
Obviously,
million
I mean,
votes.
since earlier this month. I mean, the odds of victory are still in Hillary Clinton's favor.
They're
when we look at
hugely
those
in her
things.
favor.
But
Look, you
they
cannot
are
win.
tighter than they've been. They're tighter.
Some people may think he looked presidential, but you know what? You don't win the presidency in this country by excluding and discriminating against millions of Americans of minority descent. It is a losing strategy. It wins with a very small segment of Americans who are completely out of touch with the reality of what our country is today. I would say that to anyone. And by the way, Republicans themselves are terrified because Republicans, in order to maintain their majorities in Congress, need minority votes. And what Trump has done, not just this week, but throughout his campaign, is destroy the relationship that the Republican Party has with minority communities that was built by George W. Bush very successfully. George Bush won 40% of the minority vote.
I do have to pretty much wrap this up, as much as I've enjoyed it over the last few minutes. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Gina and Lauren, thanks very much. Now,